So this is an acequia, not the most impressive thing in the world. This is a little ditch, right? But an acequia is just a diversion ditch off of the main river. I wanted to show off a couple of the tractor implements that we have here, as well as talk a little bit about the production style that we try to maintain. Now, like I said, for us, it's always experimentation. We have a lot to learn, but there's a couple things that we've noticed are working well, and there's a couple things that we've been trying that haven't been working so well. Different tools that we're playing around with. So we just kind of want to share as transparently and candidly as we could about things that we're doing that are helping, things that aren't, things like that. So our general approach here, we think about the season, we think about the year in terms of two seasons. So we group together spring, summer, and then fall, winter. And for us, because we're so far south and temperatures stay relatively high, the winter is one of the most productive times for us. So we're just on the tail end of some of our largest production of the year, where we're harvesting a lot of brassicas. So we're getting all sorts of cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kohlrabi, kale, collard greens, just a whole host of that family. And then we also get a fair amount of root vegetables. And so our biggest producers for roots, we get a lot of nice daikon radishes, turnips. We're also getting carrots, onions, different stuff like that. We have kind of a different mix. Other stuff is growing during those winter times as well, but because we rank our poundage through the year, food banks think in terms of pounds, the largest month in terms of harvest every year for us is either January or February, because we're able to pull in large volumes. We know that's a little unusual from the rest of the country. In the spring and summer, we're focusing on different crops, obviously. So we do really well on melons, we do well on squash, especially winter squash. We do really well on eggplant, we do well on peppers. We used to do well on tomatoes, not doing quite as well anymore. We're seeming to get higher temperatures a little bit earlier during that pollinating phase when those tomatoes really want to produce. And then we're getting kind of different mixed stuff. So we're growing some tomatillos, we're growing different things here and there. But those are our largest producers, and those are the crops that we kind of plan our year around in terms of what we're prioritizing. In the process, I mentioned we're not spraying any herbicides. So weed pressures are different in the winter and the summer. And so at the moment, you'll see some weeds out there, but it's not nearly as bad as kind of that April, May, June period when we're starting to get good rains and the heat's increasing. Everything seems to kind of come back at once. And I presume that our weed mix is a little bit different than it is in Michigan, for example. We're struggling with a lot of, in the wintertime, we get a lot of, we call it bastard cabbage. So a lot of yellow flowers that are coming out. So brassicas do well all around. A couple of those are weeds. In the spring and summertime, we're getting a lot of amaranth. We got a lot of KR bluestem, different Johnson grass, different grasses that are really coming in. So we try to manage those in different ways. In this region, we're at an interesting confluence of soils. I wouldn't normally tell a tour group this, but I think you guys might actually be interested in it. San Antonio is where it is, not because we're on a main river, although we do have a little adorable river. Hopefully you guys have seen the river walk. River is being a little generous if you guys have seen it. It's a creek with a bar or 12 or 20. The reason why San Antonio is where it is isn't because of the river. The reason is because of the aquifer. So we have a fabulous aquifer under our feet here. The Edwards is one of the largest in the world. Just a wonderful limestone aquifer. Texas has been covered by the ocean about 3 times. And so at least one of those times, plenty of phytoplankton dropped and compressed into limestone, and we appreciate it because they hold a lot of nice water for us. There's enough water pressure underneath that was actually able to create artesian springs. And so free-flowing water was able to be managed in this region quite a bit. Obviously, we're struggling with the same water pressures as other parts of the country, and especially other parts of the American South that have a lot of drought. And so there's plenty of resource competition for land, for water in the region. But our soils are interesting because of that geological history. If you go a little bit north of us, we have what we call the Texas Hill Country, north and northwest. And that is rocky outcroppings of limestone that have been uplifted a bit, and so the soil profile is relatively minimal. As you go east, that's what we call the Blackland Prairie, and so that has nice kind of darker plains-oriented, and so that's a really great environment for ranching, but the soils there are pretty loamy, they're nice. As you go a little bit further south and southwest of us, and this farm is kind of right on the intersection of those two, we start to get a lot sandier soil. So the particle size is larger, and that's a result of a lot of river development that happened over the years. And so we're at this interesting confluence of multiple soil types. as a farm, it presents us interesting challenges where we're managing that kind of sand challenge where it can run out quickly, but there is a lot of clay development as a result of that blackland prairie. And so we get an interesting mix of clay and sand that sometimes can hold the moisture fairly well if it rains. So follow me. We historically have not fertilized, although we're going to start to integrate a fertigation system into our drip line. Also, one other thing before we go too far, if you look towards the warehouse, you'll see 2 large rainwater catchment tanks. That's where the water for this farm comes from. We can top it off with municipal supplies, but that 210,000 square foot warehouse, almost all of that water is able to run off into those tanks that we're then able to reposition. Still requires that it rains, but when it does, we're able to take advantage of it. So we have pumps there. That's where the fertigation system will come. The pipes run the whole length of the way where we're standing, all the way to each of these fields here. It's only a 20 horsepower pump, but it does the trick pretty well. Our mains stay about 2 inches, and the pressure is able to get it this entire length here. 2 more implements that we use. This is our drip line injector if we're going on flat land. We don't do it very often. For the most part, we're bed shaping almost all of our crops. But on the occasion that we do, this is the injector that we use. And then, don't show any soil biologists, but this is a disc we use fairly often. Not that any of you would ever disc, right? Sometimes you got to. Sometimes you got to. Now, in respect of time, a little bit, there's plenty of crops that are a little bit further down. We've done a lot of harvesting. What you look at, this field here, beautifully cover cropped, right? There's plenty of good cover crop seed in there. I promise you, I paid for them. But, you know, the weather didn't cooperate quite to the same degree. Yeah, I wanted, if there's any questions about how we do our cultivation, harvesting, transplanting, seeding, anything else like that, I don't necessarily want us to walk the whole way. I think we're going to get a nice kind of shadier walk once we get to Mission San Juan. But I wanted to bring us out here and make sure at least we get boots on the ground. There are 4 other missions as well. So Mission San Juan, which is what we're standing in front of. There's also around here Mission Concepcion, Mission Espada, and Mission San Jose. All of those were the center of kind of cultural and political operations at the time as they were setting up. And it wasn't a big thing. It was a couple folks who kind of came in, and then gradually those populations rose. The reason why the mission is here in the first place is because of access to natural resources as colonies normally exhibited. The San Antonio River itself, the one that hopefully you guys aren't too far away from when you get to enjoy the Riverwalk this evening, comes all the way down here. And there's a diversion channel that comes off that they're able to, the Spanish were able to leverage for irrigation with a technique called an acequia. The reason why the National Park Service, which manages this space, allows the food bank to be able to produce on this is we are able to demonstrate some of those historic production techniques using Spanish-style acequias for irrigation. And then the food that we're able to grow here, we still bring to that community because we're the food bank. So just a little bit of context here. We don't have a ton of time here. I want you guys to be able to get back to your hotel and hang out and meet everyone else who cares about soil and water. But unfortunately, I've got to listen to my spiel just a little bit longer, all right? So my spiel here is 2 things. One, that there's a lot of important history that informs, in my opinion, the way that we're able to do production in the future around here. So acequias are a really useful irrigation technique that we probably will continue to be able to use even if there's power outages, even if there continues to be drought. There will be rivers. We can create kind of offshoot channels and then run those down into different fields. We're able to use those production techniques here. And second is, we think that there's a real role for perennial agriculture in a more sustainable and resilient context. So everything that you saw that we produce over on the other side, all of that is root vegetables, brassicas, tomatoes, peppers, all those annuals. We really think that trees are a valuable way to be able to leverage these resources productively. So even in times of drought, they're going to be able to, with their deep roots, withstand some of that and still be able to produce. And at the same time, use less labor on a recurring basis. So this church is still active. It was the center of a community back in the day, and it's still the center of a community. There's masses, there's baptisms, there's weddings that happen here. And the rock wall that you see is kind of the perimeter for where this structure was. Every other building that was built, whether it was dormitory or piece of commerce, whatever else, most of those were deconstructed over time. but no one was brave enough to deconstruct the church, so it stands exactly the same way that it is now. Apparently they were afraid of making somebody angry. So this place exists because of the agriculture that was available to be had here, because of the specifically water. And so the other farm that we're at has been produced on for about 300 years. This farm has been productive for almost, or the other one was for about 100. This one's been productive for almost 300. So I want to bring you real quickly, we're going to look at an acequia and how that process works. So I wanted to just bring you guys here. This is a little kind of demonstration area for those historic techniques. We have a peach orchard there that you can see just beyond. There's a fig orchard that we have past that. And this next month, we'll be planting about 500 plum trees in another 5-acre parcel. And then what you see here is areas that I'm not able to irrigate. And so as a result, I'm growing things that are edible that don't have to be irrigated. Chief among them being nopal, or a type of edible cactus that is something that's quite familiar to the population in this region. So what I want to show here is, so this is an acequia, not the most impressive thing in the world. This is a little ditch, right? But an acequia is just a diversion ditch off of the main river. So the San Antonio River has a little piece kind of chopped into it, and there's a diversion that runs off. It runs through this guy, and then it reconnects back to the river. Each field that I have access to, if I was to do it in the old way, I would use these sluice gates. Not the most advanced technology, again, these little wooden gates to be able to move that water. If I drop one here, then the water level rises. I can lift this one and it'll send it out. This is the way that irrigation happened back in the day when the Spanish arrived. Technically, this tiny ditch that you're looking at is the oldest legal water right in the state of Texas. And so even if everything else dries out, I'm supposed to have first right to be able to get access to water, which is pretty handy to continue to be able to produce. One of the upsides of this site is I don't have to pay for any of the water. This isn't metered. This is, a ditch, which is pretty handy. For us, not too much comes from the sky, so this is kind of the main alternative, The National Park likes us to be able to do that demonstration so that we can show the way that they used to irrigate is by flooding in between the individual rows. And they would only have to do that. For us, in my experience, this section here that we irrigate in that historic way, even at the height of summer, I only need to irrigate once a week, once every 9 days or so, because of that deep water infiltration once it sits for long enough. Now the rest of the property, beyond this first tree line here, I'm able to use more modern irrigation techniques. So I have a large sump pump that's inside the acequia, and it runs out to some of my kind of 3-inch main, and then each of those run into a drip line that I have surrounding each of my trees. So what you see here is this kind of front area that we've preserved for demonstration processes in the historic context, and then beyond, we're able to do a little bit more modern production so we can get a higher yield. But my staff is generally over at the other site, and so I like perennials here because it's a little bit less maintenance over the course of a long period of time. So we'll come do some mowing, every other month or so. We'll come and do pruning once a year. I'd like to get into a little bit more foliar style fertilization or even some fertigation to try to get them a little more nutrients. We'll amend for what we think are nutrient deficiencies. In this soil type, we get iron deficiencies fairly often in things like peaches. So we'll supplement with a little bit of iron sulfate or iron chelate, I should say. And that's kind of the main strategy here. There's a lot more. I mean, obviously I could talk forever about all sorts of stuff, but this is the basis of why this farm site is here. And this is also the basis of why San Antonio is here in the first place.